All right, so week two, data protection, encryption, and authentication. I got some slides here, particularly talking about encryption and the different encryption methods that are available, a little bit of a historical perspective of encryption, and then some finishing up with some different types of attacks or some vulnerabilities associated with encryption. So, at the end of the lecture or the recording, you should be able to talk about significant events as it relates to discoveries of history of cryptography, a little bit of background on that, basic principles, operating principles of the most popular cryptographic tools, list the major protocols used for secure communications, and then discuss the nature of the dominant methods of attacks used in crypto systems. A little bit of terminology that you should be familiar with as it relates to cryptography. And although cryptography is not specific to any particular application or a specific security tool, encryption does represent, a fairly sophisticated approach to security that's implemented across a variety of security systems. In fact, many of the security-related tools use embedded encryption techniques or technologies to protect sensitive information handled by that particular application. Encryption obviously is the process of converting an original message into a form that's unreadable by unauthorized individuals. That is, anyone that does not have the tool to convert the encrypted message back to the original format. The science of encryption, sometimes referred to as cryptography, encompasses cryptography and then cryptanalysis, which is the process of obtaining the original message from plain text from an encrypted message, or sometimes referred to as ciphertext, without the knowledge of the algorithm and the keys used to perform the encryption. Again, cryptography has been around for a long time, multicultural history, and some things that you should be aware of as far as terminology. The concept of a cipher is the transformation of the individual components, whether it's a character, a byte, or bits, of an unencrypted message to an encrypted component. Ciphertext or cryptograms is that unintelligible, unreadable, encrypted or encoded message that's the result of some sort of form of an encryption. Code is the transformation of the larger components, words or phrases, of an unencrypted message into a crypted component. And then, decipher obviously is to decrypt or convert ciphertext back to plain text, and cipher is to encrypt or convert plain text to ciphertext. The key, or crypto variable, sometimes referred to a crypto variable, is the information that's used in conjunction with the algorithm, which is the mathematical formula used to convert unencrypted messages into an encrypted message. But the combination of the two, the key and the algorithm, to create that ciphertext from plain space or from plain text. Key space is the entire range of values that can possibly be used to construct an individual key. And then, some other more obscure uses of technology or cryptography. You see things like steganography, which is the process of hiding messages in a picture or a graphic or a sound file. And then when we talk about breaking encryption, we often use the term work factor, which is the amount of effort, usually measured in hours, required to perform a cryptanalysis on an encoded message. A couple of different cipher methods that we should talk about and you should be familiar with. Make sure that you're familiar with the terms plain text, so that you're familiar with that we're talking about. That piece of information that is readable can be encrypted through two different methods, bitstream or block cipher. Bitstream, if we look at a particular piece of information that we're going to encrypt in bitstream, each plain text bit is transformed into a cipher bit, one bit at a time. And then block cipher, the message is divided into blocks, usually 8 or 16-bit blocks, and each is, or not usually, but as an example, 8 or 16-bit blocks, and then each is transformed into the encrypted block of cipher bits using algorithmic key. And obviously, just a real quick look at that, you can tell that there's some big differences as far as the level of security and processing speed. Bitstream obviously is going to be a bit more secure, but it's going to be more labor intensive as far as resources. Block cipher is going to be much more efficient in use of resources, but not quite as secure. So looking at some cryptography and encryption based solutions, that we want to understand that this is all formula based. It's very mathematical in nature, so we often use notations to describe the process, and you will see that sometimes these formulas are represented differently depending on which source you're looking at. I like to use this following in order to help myself understand and communicate how encryption works. So first use the letters M to represent the original message, right? So M. C represents the ending ciphertext, and then E represents the encryption process. So E parenthesis M equals C. So the encryption process on the message equals the ciphertext. And then if we look at, again, D representing the decryption or deciphering process. If we decrypt the encrypted message, we come back to the message itself. And then K, I always use to represent key. The encryption process, message plus key equals ciphertext, or encrypting the message with the key results in the ciphertext. So a substitution cipher, again, in encryption, the most commonly used algorithms includes one or two functions, either substitution or transposition. In a substitution cipher, you're substituting one value for another. Pretty simple method by itself, but can be very powerful if we combine it with other operations. Typically, or the simplest form of a substitution cipher is a monoalphabetic substitution. Since it only uses one alphabet, it's relatively easy. And a weakness of a substitution cipher, by the way, is frequency analysis. If you can do frequency analysis with a large enough block of encrypted text, it's relatively easy to break a monoalphabetic substitution cipher because the cipher letter only will represent one other letter, and therefore we can do a quick frequency analysis on it. It should be relatively easy to break. More advanced substitution ciphers use two or more alphabets and are referred to as polyalphabetic. And basically the way that it works is you usually have some sort of shift, and probably the most well-known is the Caesar shift, where Caesar reportedly used a 3-value shift to the right, giving that particular substitution, that monoalphabetic substitution, his name, the Caesar shift. This is an example of a Vigenère square which uses 26 alphabets, and the strength of this is that any one letter of plain text, represented by the letters across the top, can be represented by 26 other letters, 26 letters in the ciphertext, including itself. So it makes frequency analysis incredibly difficult. Transposition ciphers are simply rearrange the values within a block to create the ciphertext. Just like a substitution operation, it's very simple to understand but can be incredibly complex to decipher if properly used. Unlike the substitution cipher, the transposition cipher, or sometimes referred to as the permutation cipher, simply rearranges the values within a block to create the ciphertext. This can be done at the bit level or at the byte or character level as well. Transposition ciphers, would move these bits or bytes to another location within the block, so that bit 1, for instance, would become bit 4, bit 2 would become bit 7, and so forth and so on. To make the encryption stronger, the keys and block sizes can be made much larger. The larger the keys, the larger the block size, the more difficult it is to break bits transposition cipher. Another type of cipher is the book or running cipher, and here we would use text in a book as a key to decrypt the message. Ciphertext contains codes representing page numbers, lines, and words, and then you look up the references from the ciphertext and convert each reference to a word by using the ciphertext value and the key. It's typically things like dictionaries or thesauruses or well-known documents are used in this particular type of cipher. And then finally, we'll talk a little bit about the exclusive OR function or XOR function, and this is Boolean algebra. 2 bits are compared. If 2 bits are identical, the result is a binary 0, and of course bits can only be represented by 2 digits, 0 or 1. It's either on or off. So if the 2 bits are identical, regardless of if it's a 0 and a 0 or a 1 and a 1, the result is a binary 0. And if 2 bits are not identical, a 0 and a 1 or a 1 and a 0, the result is a binary 1. It's very simple, symmetric cipher that's used in a bunch of different applications where security is not a defined requirement. And here's a truth table representing the exclusive OR function or the XOR function. So the first 2 bits are zeros, so the result is a 0. Next to the first bit's a 0, second bit's a 1, and the result is a 1, and so forth and so on. Hash functions are a little bit different, where hash functions don't actually encrypt anything. They're publicly known functions that create a hash value. Think of it as a digital fingerprint, also known as a message digest, by converting variable length messages into a single fixed length value. The message digest, again, I mentioned it's a fingerprint of the message that's to be compared with the copies of those messages to make sure that the content of the message hasn't changed. Hashing functions do not require the use of a key, but a message authentication code, which is essentially a one-way hash value that is encrypted with a symmetric key. Recipients must possess the key in order to access the message digest and confirm that the message's integrity. You see these used a lot in secure communications, electronic contracts, big use in the forensic world. This is how the chain of evidence is established in digital forensics and maintained. A little graphical representation of various hash values. Probably the most popular is the MD5, the SHA-1, and the 256. But there's a variety of them out there. And again, these do not encrypt the message. They simply create a unique ID of that message to really address integrity of that particular message. Cryptographic algorithms in general are often grouped into 2 broad categories, symmetric and asymmetric. But in practice, today's more popular crypto systems use a hybrid combination of both symmetric and asymmetric encryption, and they can be distinguished by the types of keys they use for encryption and decryption process. In symmetric encryption, it indicates that the same key, also known as a secret key, is used to conduct both the encryption and decryption message. Symmetric encryption methods can be very efficient. They can, because they require minimal processing to either decrypt or encrypt the message. The problem is that both the sender and the receiver must own the encryption key. So if either copy of the key is compromised, perhaps an intermediate can get a hold of one of those keys, then they can decrypt and read the messages, and they can also create other messages and encrypt them so they can cause some confusion in the message stream. One of the challenges in symmetric key encryption is getting a copy of the key to the receiver. The process must be conducted out of band or offline to avoid some sort of interception. So that's the difficulty with symmetric key or secret key encryption. Not very practical for internet communication. Here's a graphical representation of an example of symmetrical encryption. Rachel is going to generate a secret key. She has to get it to Alex out of band, and then once Alex has it, Rachel can use it to encrypt a message, and Alex can use it to decrypt and read it. The trouble is getting that key, right? Somehow it has to be sent from Rachel to Alex by a trusted third party. Symmetric encryption, a couple of popular crypto systems. Probably one of the most familiar is Data Encryption Standard, or DES, developed in 1977 by IBM, and it's based on the data encryption algorithm. Uses a 64-bit block and a 56-bit key. Problematic for certain reasons, and we'll talk about that. The algorithm begins by adding a parity bit to the key, resulting in 64 bits, and then applies the key in rounds of 16 XOR or substitution or transposition operations. With a 56-bit key, the algorithm has 256 possible keys to choose from. DES was a federally approved standard for non-classified data. It was cracked in 1997. RSA actually put a bounty out on the algorithm. They offered $10,000 reward for the first person or team to crack the algorithm. 14,000 users collaborated over the internet and finally broke the encryption. So as a result, Triple DES was created to provide more security, which basically is the same algorithm, the same process. It just runs the clear text through the algorithm 3 times. So it encrypts it, and then it encrypts it again, encrypts it again. Advanced Encryption Standard, AES, was developed to replace both DES and Triple DES. Asymmetric encryption is another category of encryption techniques, sometimes referred to as public key encryption, whereas the symmetric encryption systems are based on a single key, both to encrypt and decrypt. Asymmetric uses 2 different keys. Either key can be used to encrypt or decrypt a message. However, if key A is used to encrypt the message, only key B can decrypt it, and if key B is used to encrypt it, then only key A can decrypt it. The public key is stored in a public location where anybody can use it. The private key, as the name suggests, is a secret key which only the owner of the key pair knows. The problem with asymmetric encryption is that it requires 4 keys to hold a single conversation between the 2 parties. Asymmetric encryption is not as efficient as symmetric encryption in terms of CPU computations. As a result, the hybrid systems described graphical representation. Again, we have Alex wants to send Rachel a message. Rachel stores her public key where anybody can get it, some sort of public key repository. Alex goes out and grabs Rachel's public key, uses it to create ciphertext that can only be decrypted by Rachel's private key, which she has stored on perhaps her thumb drive or on her computer. To respond, Rachel has to go out and get Alex's public key and encrypt his message or her message to him. Again, only his private key would be able to decrypt a message that was encrypted with his public key. In encryption, when using ciphers, one of the decisions that has to be made is the size of the crypto variable or the key. The strength of many encryption applications in crypto systems is measured by the key size, and we say that because the algorithm, the mathematical calculation, is known, it's published, it's been tested. So the only part that's actually secret is the key. And the size of the key in encryption is very important. When it comes to some crypto systems, the security of the encrypted data has nothing to do with keeping that algorithm secret. It is all about the strength of that key, or the length of that key, the size of the key. The security of the crypto system, again, depends on keeping some or all the elements of the crypto variables or keys secret, and that's important to remember. A little graphical representation of the key power. If we look at key length in bits, maximum number of operating guesses, maximum time to crack, and then the estimated time to crack. And as you can see pretty easily, the representation as the keys grow in size, the more difficult it is, or the more time consuming it is to break these keys. Some cryptographic tools, and the areas that we might see those is, again, we want to use cryptographic tools to conceal sensitive information. We also can use it to verify the contents of messages and also the identity of their senders. Tools must embody cryptographic capabilities so that they can be applied to everyday world of computing, and we see it used all the time in things like secure socket layering and wireless security. So cryptographic tools are often used. Public key infrastructure, I mentioned it a little bit ago, is basically an integrated system of software, encryption methodologies, protocols, legal agreements, and third-party services that enable users to communicate securely. They are based on public key crypto systems and include digital certificates and certificate authorities as part of the process. Authentication, PKI protects information assets in a bunch of different ways, in several ways. First, authentication. Digital certificates in a PKI system permit parties to validate the identity of other parties in an internet transaction. They provide for integrity. They demonstrate that the content signed by the certificate has not been altered while being moved from server to client. They can provide privacy, that keep information from being intercepted during the transmission over the internet. Authorization, right? PKI environment can replace user IDs and passwords, enhance security, reduce some of the overhead required for authorization process, and for controlling access privileges. And then non-repudiation, they can validate actions, right? They can make it less likely that a customer or partner can later dispute or later repudiate a digitally signed transaction. If we look at digital signatures, it's an interesting thing that happens when the asymmetric process is reversed. That is, the private key is used to encrypt a short message. The public key can be used to decrypt it, and the fact that the message was sent by the organization that owns the key cannot be refuted. This is known as non-repudiation, which is basically the foundation for digital signatures. Digital signatures are encrypted messages that are independently verified by a central facility or registry as being authentic. Digital certificates, as I mentioned earlier, is an electronic document similar to a digital signature that's attached to a file certifying that the file is from the organization it claims to be from and has not been modified from the originating format. A certificate authority basically is an agency that manages the issuance of certificates and serves as the electronic notary public to verify their worth and integrity. Here's an example of a digital certificate. You can see who it was issued to: Amazon, issued by Verizon, and the valid dates, and this one's from 2009 to 2010. Hybrid crypto systems. In practice, asymmetric encryption is not widely used except for in the area of certificates. Instead, it's more often used in conjunction with symmetric key encryption, creating this hybrid system. The current process is based on the Diffie-Hellman key exchange, which I believe is in your reading, which is a way to exchange private keys without exposure to any third party using public key encryption. With this method, asymmetric encryption is used as a method to exchange symmetric keys so that two organizations can conduct quick and efficient secure communications based on symmetric encryption. Diffie-Hellman provided the foundations for some subsequent developments of public key encryption. Graphical representation of a hybrid encryption where Rachel wants to send Alex a message. So she stores her public key where it can be accessed. He retrieves it, uses it to encrypt his symmetric key. He sends it to Rachel, who decrypts his session key with her private key, and then uses Alex's session key for short-term private communication. Hybrid encryption. I mentioned in the intro this concept of steganography, and steganography is really the process of hiding information, and it's been used for a long time. The most popular modern versions of steganography involve hiding information within files that appear to be digital pictures or other images. Most computer graphics standards use combinations of three color values, red, blue, and green, to represent a picture element or a pixel. Each of the three color values usually requires 8-bit code for the color intensity. For example, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0 for no red, and 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1 for maximum red. The inability to perceive differences on the part of the human eye provides the steganographer with 1 bit per color or 3 bits per pixel to use for encoding data into an image file. There are some applications out there that are capable of hiding messages within bitmaps and WAV files, MP3s and audio files, as well as unused storage space on CDs and DVDs. This is a whole field of study, and there's a whole bunch of certifications that are available as far as steganography. Really an interesting area to delve into if you want to carve out a little niche for yourself. Talk about protocols for secure communications. Much of the software that's currently used to protect confidential information are not true crypto systems. They are applications to which cryptographic protocols have been added. This is particularly true in the internet protocols. As the number of threats to the internet grew, obviously the need for better encryption measures or additional security measures were recognized. Secure Hypertext Transfer Protocol, or SHTTP, is basically an encrypted solution to the unsecured version of HTTP. It's been around for quite a while. Provides an alternative to HTTP and can provide some secure e-commerce transaction as well as encrypted web pages for secure data transfer over the web using a bunch of different algorithms. Secure Shell, or SSH, provides security over remote access connections using tunneling. I believe somebody mentioned a little bit about tunneling as a method for gaining access into a network as well. A little bit different concept here, but same basic principle. Provides authentication services between client and server. IPsec is the cryptographic authentication of encryption product of IETF's IP Protocol Security Working Group, defined as RFC 1825, 1826, and 1827. IP security is often used to create virtual private networks, or VPNs, in an open framework for security development within the TCP/IP family of protocol standards. So basically, there's a bunch of different opportunities or attempts to make secure communications over the internet. Probably the most familiar with is secure socket layering, which basically uses public key encryption to secure channels over the public internet. And we want to make sure that we understand that it's just a communication stream that's encrypting and not actually anything to do with the endpoints. Securing email, a bunch of different encryption or cryptographic systems that have been used to attempt to inject some degree of security into email, which is, obviously a notoriously unsecured medium. S-MIME builds on the multi-purpose internet mail exchange encoding format by adding encryption and authentication through digital signatures based on public key encryption. PAM, or Privacy Enhanced Mail, proposed by the Internet Engineering Task Force, the IETF, as a standard to function with public key crypto systems. PAM uses triple DES symmetric key encryption and RSA for key exchanges and digital signatures. PGP, developed by Phil Zimmerman, uses IDEA cipher, which is a 128-bit symmetric key block encryption with 64-bit blocks for message encoding. IDEA performs 8 rounds on a 16-bit sub block using algebraic calculations. PGP also uses RSA for symmetric key exchange and for digital signatures. So there's some options out there to secure email as well. Just like PGP and PAM and S-MIME works to secure email operations, there's a number of related protocols that work to secure web browsers, especially looking at electronic commerce sites. Among these are Secure Exchange Transactions, or SET, developed by MasterCard and Visa. It's a proprietary. In 1997, provide protection from electronic payment fraud. Works by basically encrypting the credit card transfer with DES for encryption and RSA for key exchange. Very similar to other algorithms. The SET provides the security for both internet-based credit card transactions and encryption at swipe systems of credit card locations in retail stores. Moving into securing wireless networks, a couple of different encryption standards that are available. Wired Equivalent Privacy, or WEAP, early attempt to provide security to the wireless network protocol. WPA and WPA2, which was created to resolve some of the security issues that were identified in WEP. And then we have some next generation wireless protocols, robust secure networks, AES. There's a bunch of them out there, like counter mode encapsulation, offset cookbook encapsulation, and then obviously we have Bluetooth, which can be exploited by anyone within about 30-foot range of the Bluetooth connection. So, that's a real concern for wireless communication. So if we continue to look at, some different protocols for secure communication, and I had mentioned it earlier, the IPsec takes a bunch of different crypto systems. It combines a bunch of different crypto systems. Diffie-Hellman key exchange for deriving key material between peers on a public network. Public key cryptography for signing the Diffie-Hellman key exchange to guarantee the identity of the two parties. Bulk encryption algorithms like DES for encrypting data. Digital certificates signed by certificate authority to act as a digital ID cards. IPsec includes the IP security protocol itself, which basically defines the information to add to an IP packet, as well as how to encrypt the packet. And then the Internet Key Exchange, which uses asymmetric based key exchange to key exchange and negotiate the security associations. Internet security or Internet Protocol Security, or IPsec, also has looking at PGP, which is, as I mentioned, a hybrid crypto system developed in 1991 by Zimmerman. Combined some of the best available cryptographic algorithms of the time to become an open source, basically de facto standard for encryption and authentication of email and file storage. Both freeware and low-cost commercial versions, PGP, are available for a wide variety of platforms. It's a solution provides 6 services: authentication by digital signature, message encryption, compression, email compatibility, segmentation, and key management as well. I've used PGP for a long time, and I'm very pleased with it. There's some issues with it, and if you are interested in using PGP, you may want to look at it. And mostly, it's the ability to create multiple identities in PGP is a problem, in my opinion, but something to look at. Graphical representation of the PGP function, public key encryption, uses RSA and SHA-1 or DSS and SHA-1 for the digital signatures. Conventional encryption using triple DES, RSA, IDA, or CAST for the encryption of the actual message, and then file management, it uses a zip algorithm for compression. It's really a good tool. As I mentioned, we're going to talk a little bit about some attacks on crypto systems, and historically, attempts to gain unauthorized access to secure communications have used this concept of brute force, or just trying to guess your way into it. Ciphertext attacks involve a hacker searching for a common text structure, wording, syntax in the encrypted message that can enable him or her to calculate the number for each letter used in the message. Frequency analysis, I had mentioned a little bit ago, is used along with some published frequency of occurrence patterns. Frequency analysis can be used, again, looking for occurrence of patterns in various languages, and allow for an attacker to crack almost any code quickly. If the individual has a large enough sample of the encoded text, it's incredibly difficult to do with a short data set. Occasionally, attacker may obtain duplicate texts, one in ciphertext and one in plain text, which enables the individual to reverse engineer the encryption algorithm in what's referred to as a known plain text attack scheme. And then alternatively, an attacker may conduct a selected plain text attack by sending the potential victim a specific text that they are sure the victim will forward on to others. So there's a bunch of different ways. We'll look at a couple of them here real quick. First one is the man in the middle, designed to intercept the transmission of the public key, or to perhaps even insert a known key structure in place of the requested public key. From the perspective of the victim of this attack, their encrypted communication appears to be occurring normally, but in reality, the attacker is receiving each encrypted message and decoding it, then encrypting it and sending it to the originally intended recipient, hence the man in the middle. Establishment of a public key with digital signatures can prevent this type of man in the middle attack, as the attacker cannot duplicate the signatures. And this is also one of the big concerns for electronic banking in the Android, the man in the middle attack. And this is might be one of the areas that we see a lot of news about here in the future. Correlation attack are collections of brute force methods that attempt to deduce statistically the relationship between the unknown key and the ciphertext that is the basic output of the crypto system. Differential and linear cryptanalysis, which both of which are advanced methods for breaking codes, have been used to mount some successful attacks on block cipher encryption like DES. And again, the only defense against this kind of attack is strong crypto system that's been tested and retested through effective and efficient key management, and then strict adherence to best practices for frequency of changing your keys. Dictionary attack, here the attacker basically encrypts every word in the dictionary using the same crypto system used by the target. They can be successful when the crypto system, when the ciphertext consists of relatively few characters. For example, files that contain encrypted names, usernames, and passwords. After a match is located, the attacker has essentially identified potential valid passwords. In a timing attack, the attacker basically eavesdrops during the victim's session and uses a statistical analysis of the user's typing patterns and enter keystroke timing to discern sensitive session information. Usually not able to directly result in decryption of sensitive data, it can be used to gain information about the encryption key and perhaps the crypto system in use. Once the attacker has successfully broken an encryption, then they can launch a replay attack, which is an attempt to submit a recording of the deciphered authentication to gain entry into the secure source. So talked a little bit about some different encryption standards. We talked a little bit about attacks, we should spend just a couple minutes about defending against an attack. And basically it boils down to, no matter how sophisticated the encryption or crypto system is, they have the same flaw that the first system contained thousands of years ago. If you don't control your key, you lose control of the key, the attacker can figure out what the message is. Key management is not so much the management of technology, but really about the management of people. And that's the same thing we've been saying for a long time. In summary, cryptography and encryption provide some really great tools for individuals that want to embed some security within their communication stream or within their data storage. And there's lots of tools that are available, but you have to make sure that you administer this particular tool correctly. The strength of encryption is totally dependent upon the size of the key, and the security is totally dependent upon the control of that key. All right, thank you very much.